What? He doesn't fight people and utilize his action skills? That's crazy. That's news to me.
So I actually heard a story where apparently you did get very physical with one of the actors, Jared, and you apparently like dislocated his shoulder. I never heard the story from your point of view, so I was just kind of wondering why.
Wait, okay, hi Danielle. Whose point of view did you hear it from?
Actually, it was my mother who told me the story.
Your mother's point of view, where was she? Was she?
She's a huge Supernatural fan with me, and she's just like, oh yeah, Osric, he's actually very physical, that scene where he's running from Jared actually had to try really hard to keep up with him and everything, because it turned out this kid was actually in track or something like that. She's constantly talking about how, well, badass you are. So I just kind of wanted to know what your perspective of dislocating this giant's arm was.
Well, first off, Danielle, say hello to your mother for me. How many people have heard this story? I'm just curious. Okay. Oh, actually, most of you haven't. Okay. So, oh man, this was like early days for me, where I didn't really know anybody that well. We'd gone to a couple conventions, and so like I'd say like these guys were acquaintances, right? Like, okay, like we're familiar, we kind of know of each other, but like we didn't really know each other. We were in Italy, and it was one of these conventions where most people didn't speak English. There was like some translation, like it was kind of like a field trip, right? Like we're off in this thing, and then we're doing these panels, photo ops and stuff, and you kind of congregate back in the green room. And so the green room was kind of like this quiet place where we'd just hang out. And I had a book, I was reading, and the guys, they were just sitting, chatting. And Jared comes walking in, I don't know, he just come from something, and he just like walks in, he looks around, he's like, anyone want to wrestle? And no one says anything. And I didn't even think twice about it. I'm like, well, we're not doing anything. This book isn't that captivating. I'm like, sure. And so I put down my book. I turned back around. I was like fully expecting, I'm like, okay, like let's move some couches out of the way. No, Jared's just like coming at me. I'm like, oh man, this is happening really fast. So it gets a little fuzzy here. Because Jared, as you know, is quite strong. I don't know how many of you have met him in person or have been hugged by him, but he's got quite the bear hug. So immediately he's just like trying to like manhandle me, and he does. But thankfully, I do have some training, and Jared, he's mostly limbs. He's like strong, but mostly limbs. And so there's like a lot of openings that I can kind of like find, and I was just like working my way around his arms and stuff. And before you know it, I'm kind of on his back, right? So, if anyone does grappling sports, you'll know that this is a very good technique. You want to get someone's back, then you can put your arm around their neck and cut off their air supply. Which is what I was doing to Jared, right? Which was, doubly enforced by the cheering in the room. So, I'm trying to remember who was in the room. I'm pretty sure Mark Shepard was in the room, Tyleson was in the room, who else is in the room? There's quite a lot of people. I think Misha came in after. I think Jensen was in the room. Tamo was in the room. There's like 5 people here. Anyways, the screaming, this like the yelling, like they were kind of in there. They were like coaching both of us on both sides. It was pretty funny, I think, from their perspective. Anyway, so I got Jared's neck, and I'm squeezing, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I'm like, this is it. In any normal combat situation, this person will either tap out or they will pass out. But it's Jared. He's very competitive, and he's also very tall, so he uses his advantage and he stands up, and all of a sudden I'm really high up in the air. And in this situation, someone of my stature might let go. But I I just hold on tighter. So I'm squeezing tighter. He's losing oxygen. He's unable to think as straight because you need oxygen to utilize your brain. And the coach is like here. There's like a marble coffee table there. I thought he was gonna slam me on the table. Thankfully, he did not aim for the table. He didn't aim for the couch either. He kind of aimed for somewhere in between. It was carpeted, so it wasn't that bad. But he was also really large, so I was able to kind of like hide behind him, so he kind of slammed himself down. And as soon as we got on the floor, I was still behind him, like on top of him. And then, he taps out, and again, I'm feeling really good about myself. And everyone's cheering, and then I look over at Jared, and he just like gets up, and he's like this. And I mean, I know he's a white guy, but he was like even more white. He was so pale, and he was like head down, like 1,000-mile stare. And he's like, I think I dislocated my shoulder. And my heart just dropped. Again, not that close of friends yet. All I know is that he's the lead of this show that I'm kind of on still. And then the room erupts into applause, which made me feel even worse. And at this moment, for whatever reason, Misha's the only person that I can think of in this moment, because when I was like so distraught that I had done this to Jared, Misha just kept trying to make me fist bump him. And that is like my only memory of post hurting Jared. I've never seen Misha that happy in my life. Anyways, turns out he was fine. Like to Jared's credit, he was like, he knew how bad I felt. I mean, he felt bad. Like, don't get me wrong. But he knew how bad that I felt, and he was like cracking jokes. Like, he really went out of his way to make me feel better about it. And he was so gracious despite having like a dislocated shoulder. It was like an old aggravated injury. And then later on, I also heard that they used to wrestle a lot at conventions, and they were banned from wrestling at several conventions. So it wasn't that bad, but like in the middle of the con, I felt I just like would not have them like cheering for this. Like, guys, like Jared's hurt. You guys are assholes. Stop doing this. And they kept like, I mean, we all know the guys. And because I was doing that, they kept egging it on even further and further and started giving me all these nicknames. They're like, Godfather Chow. I'm like, oh my God. And I just could not do it. And then they kept calling me Master Chow, and that one stuck. And it was like the whole weekend, it kept going. But anyways, the wrestling that they normally do, turns out like Jensen's had massive like rug burns that they've had to hide with makeup.
Oh my God.
Misha has dislocated his elbow, which sounds awful. So apparently there's a season when his arms are like just glued to his side. It's not because Castiel is stiff. Misha couldn't move his arm. Anyways, this cast is crazy. And that's kind of how it happened. Sorry. To break it down, when he was coming down, his elbow hit the couch on the way down, and it just kind of like pushed his shoulder up and out of its socket. And then Tomo and Cliff tried to put it back in place after, but unsuccessfully the first couple of times. Which probably helped make it worse. Yeah, that's that story.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danielle.
Hi, I'm Anne.
Hi, Anne.
I have one comment about your story, which is, why are guys so dumb? But that's not my question.
That sounds like a question for the ages. I would love to know.
My question is about Demon X, which I absolutely loved. How did you get involved in that? And if it had continued, what would have been the resolution of the cliffhanger?
Demon X. So Demon X was a web series that was done by Jason Fisher, who was in The Office. I actually never met him on Supernatural, but he was in The Office at Supernatural, and he got a bunch of us together to do this series that he got funded through the Independent Production Fund of Canada. So it's through this system that I'm now learning But you know what? It was super fun. You know, he was very collaborative. I had a lot of like feedback for him, but he just didn't have time to like enact any of it. But you know, I commended him for his efforts. Anyways, I jumped into it. I got to play the main bad guy for the first time, which was really fun because I never get to play bad guys. And bad guys, as an actor, I think are the most fun to play. So if it kept going on, that's a good question. I would like to think that my character remains the big bad guy. I wouldn't want to be a good guy until like season 3 or 4 if it kept going on. I definitely like playing the evil character that gets to crush all these souls and stuff, and then I get some action scenes out of that, for sure. It's been a couple years though, and unfortunately, I don't think it's gonna happen, but Jason remains like one of the busiest production coordinators in Vancouver. I haven't actually come across his way since, but thanks for the reminder. I'm gonna have to reach out and say hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Whoa, deep cut Demon X. Hey there.
Hi there, my name's Phaedra.
Hi, Phaedra.
I was hoping for those of us who aren't familiar with it, you would be able to tell us your origin story of how you got and then became Kevin Tran.
Oh, yeah. Origin story of Kevin Tran. So, as an actor, you're essentially, your job, for the most part, is 95% unemployment. And that's if you're a working actor. So I have been a working actor for a while. Most of the time I assume I'm not gonna be doing anything. So most of my job is applying for work, which is auditioning, right? And so auditioning is like, you're investing time to learn these lines, perform this character that you may or may not get. And I was, at the time, you know, I wasn't in a great place, but I was like on the cusp of becoming a working actor. I was living between Beijing and Los Angeles at the time, and I was on my way to LA for a big callback for a series regular on a new TV show pilot with a big name guy that I'm not gonna mention, not for bad reasons, just because it didn't happen. But I stopped off in Vancouver as a layover for a week just to spend some time with my family. And in that week, I got an audition for Supernatural. And you know, this is normally a good thing for someone who's unemployed, except that the audition was actually the day before my other audition callback in LA. And I had already booked my flights. And so in order to make the Supernatural audition, I actually had to change my flight to the next day, and that change cost $600. And as a mostly unemployed person, that is a lot of money. In fact, that was all of my money. And I know this because I originally said, no, I'm not gonna do it. That's a very expensive audition. Normally, I don't put a dollar figure on an audition, but this one became a $600 audition. Would you pay $600 to do this audition? I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna focus on this LA thing because that one sounds pretty cool. My agent then said like, hey, I get it, but Jim Michaels is gonna be there. He's one of the producers, and then Ben Edlund, who's the director, is also gonna be there. And I looked him up like, the tip guy. Oh, that's so cool. I'm like, okay, fine. And I usually take the advice of my agent anyways. And so I said yes, and I spent $600 of my last monies to do this audition. And this was the audition that I had spent the most time on in my life, right? I rehearsed it exactly 100 times because I made a point to, I'm like, if I'm gonna spend $600 on an audition, I'm gonna do it right. And so I read it over 100 times. And usually I'll do it like maybe 10, maybe 20 if I'm feeling ambitious, but I overkilled this one. Did the audition. As much as I prepared for it, I'm pretty sure I got the role because my hair was long. Because Ben Edlund also had long hair, and he was kind of like reserved, and I was, you know, the only guy with long hair at the time. And the reason why I had long hair is because for a long time, I only got haircuts for work. So I would not cut my hair, I'd show up on set, I'll be like, do whatever you want, I don't care. And most of the time they'd give me a haircut. And the last like 2 roles, they didn't really. It's like pretty long. And then Supernatural got the role. They also didn't cut my hair, and then it just stayed long for a while. Anyways, I did the audition, did really well, got the offer, went to LA, did that audition, got the offer. On Saturday, they're like, congratulations, you got both, but you can only do one. Oh. But guess what? That one's way bigger than Supernatural. Supernatural's 2 episodes and then you die. I'm like, well, I'll take the big one. She's like, but the big one's not guaranteed. You have to wait till network and studio approve you, and so you won't know till Wednesday. But you have to let us know about Supernatural by Monday. I'm like, so I could lose everything. They're like, yes. I'm like, dah. And so I said, all right, I'm going for the big fish. Sorry, Supernatural. And I actually went for the other one, and then by Monday, actually, they were like, hey, guess what? They're both Warner Brothers shows. They don't want to lose an actor to their own shows, so they're going to try to find a way to make it work. And so even though I declined Supernatural, it still worked out. And then the other pilot ended up not going anyways. So I dodged a bullet on that one. And then, yeah, then I got the show. They didn't cut my hair. And then I did another show between season 7 and 8, which shaved my head. And then Crowley gave me a haircut for season 8. And that is the story of how I got short hair for season 8. Thank you. Hey there.
Hello.
Hi.
How was your experience working on The Flash?
Oh, The Flash. I love The Flash. So, for those of you who don't know, I also played Ryan Choi, who becomes the paragon of humanity, and then the Atom, which is a superhero in the Arrowverse. This was super cool because in 2010-ish, I remember my roommate at the time, he put a comic book in front of me. It's like, hey, the all-new Atom. This is like an Asian superhero. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know there was any. And this was the first one. And I reached out to the author, and Gail Simone, who's a fantastic author, who's done many things, Red Sonja. She actually put me in Red Sonja after this. But she was like, oh my God, you'd be a perfect Atom. And then I did Supernatural, and I remember reached out to Ben Edlund. I'm like, hey, you do the tick stuff. Like, can we develop something like this? It would be really cool. And like, you know what? CW's already developing something with the Atom, so they couldn't. And that was sad. And then when the audition came out, super secretive, all NDAs, they were auditioning for, I think the character was like Kyle Muzak or something weird like that. And I was reading through the sides, and I'm like, man, this is like familiar. And I reached out to my friend, he's like, dude, I think this is it. And so in the audition, this was when we were still doing them in person, I remember I did the scenes, and it was the writer, casting director, and the producers, and they're like, oh, this is good, this is good. And then at the end of my audition, I'm like, is this for Ryan Choi? And then I saw the reactions on their face, they're like, and I'm like, okay, thank you. And I walked out of the room, and I was like, yes, I got him. And then, I mean, it could have backfired, to be honest. But I got the job right after that. I was just feeling, I'm like, yes, insider baseball. And I got the job, which is super cool. And they actually didn't know that Ryan Choi became the Atom afterwards. And this is where it like actually blew my mind. I remember we did this, I forgot which episode, but there's a lot of these characters, and everyone was like, oh yeah, I'm this character from this comic, this character from that comic. And I talked to the writer. I'm like, hey, like, how do you, like, man, you guys like do deep cuts in terms of like all of these tie-ins to all these like lesser known heroes. And the writer's like, you know what, we just called that guy Marcus, and then we looked up if there was a hero that was named Marcus, and then it became that character. I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, wait, so like Ryan, like what are you gonna do with the Atom stuff? Like, you know, like Brandon's stepping down, so like, and you're introducing me like in the exact same episode. Like, you guys gonna do anything? He's like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean what? He's like, I'm like, Ryan becomes the Atom, right? He's like, what? writer didn't know. And I was like so like mind-boggling. I'm like, wait, you can't tell me that's a coincidence. That the atom steps down and you introduce the guy that becomes the atom, and that's like pure accident. It might have been an accident. And then because I brought it up, like later on, eventually, like they actually made it happen. And then we did like months of fitting this suit that costs like $100,000 to build out, that feels like a giant stiff condom. Like, shot it for one day and that was it. Anyways, I loved working on that show. I wish it was a little bit more organized, but at the same time, they were trying to I was in all of the crossover episodes. So they tried to shoot 6 or 5 episodes with 6 shows' lead actors at the same time. If you know anything about logistics, it's an impossible problem, and they somehow made it. Every single actor had like a body double, a stunt double, a photo double. So there's like 4 versions of every lead actor jumping on every set. And so like one day I'd start off I'm on the Arrow set with the Legends of Tomorrow crew, with the cast of Supergirl, and then, with the makeup from The Flash though. And then, but we're filming like Batwoman, and then we'd just kind of jump around sets with different variations of the crew. It was so confusing. So we didn't really know what was going on until after the fact, but I guess it was cool just to see that crazy logistical nightmare. I'm pretty sure the first ADs who are in charge of that must have gone insane. Yeah, that was my experience on the Arrowverse. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it was also cool to hang out with you're in a room and everybody is a #1 on their show. I'm like Supergirl, Batwoman, Superman, and then there's Flash, and then there's Black Lightning, and then there's this guy. Imposter syndrome galore. I honestly didn't know what I was doing there. Paragon of humanity. I'm the most human in this group. I guess that's cool. Hey there.
Hi, I'm Dawn.
Dawn?
Dawn, yes.
Dawn, cool name.
And I'm actually Danielle's mom.
Hi, Danielle's mom. Oh, hi.
Yeah, it's very sweet that you told her to
Say hi
tell
to
me
you.
Hi, and everything. Well, if I go up, I can get it directly from the source. So
Hi, Dawn. Very nice to meet you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I know there was a lot of pranking that happened on.
No. That's another show. They actually had a strict no pranking policy on our show. It's kind of crazy.
Well, they may have that policy, but I think the reality is a little different. I've heard the story about how the boys were trying to get you to shoot the cameraman with the super soaker.
Yeah.
And I've heard about Jared baking you out, swapping out the rubber skillet for the metal one.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if there was a prank story you would like to tell, whether you were involved, the target, just there to witness it. Is there just a good set prank story that you would like to share?
None of them are good. That's the thing. They're all traumatic. They're all terrible. There's always a victim. Even the Super Soaker one. The Super Soaker one was it was their invitation, come on, join the dark side. All you gotta do is point that gun at Brad's crotch, and you could be one of us. And I was tempted. I'm not gonna lie. I was so tempted. I'm like, oh. But then you look at Brad's face, and he's just like, please, we can't afford another one of these. And so I did it, and then, of course, at the end, then they ended up shooting Brad themselves. But, I don't know, I think, coming from, this could be my last job, you're never in a place of security that you're like, oh, I'm gonna take some time to interrupt people working. So I'm always on the opposite side. I'm coming in prepared, I want to do my job well, and then I'm gonna go out and hopefully I didn't bother anyone in the middle of that. The other big one that really traumatized me for a little bit, I've told this one before. It's season 8, episode 2 at Short Hair. It was outside. It was a Friday night. Jared, new father. Jen and baby were in Seattle. He was gonna go there and spend some time with the baby. I had a flight ready that night to go back to LA. I don't know, Jensen was just doing Jensen stuff. We were in the last scene of the day, and it was really simple setup. We shot most of the scene, there's just one shot left, and that was on me. I'm talking to mostly Jensen, but you can see part of Jared in there, so he has to be in there too. And we're doing the scene, and then all of a sudden, I just feel this tickle on my knee, and I like jump out because, I got a tickle on me, and I'm like, whoa. I'm like, oh, it's Jared. I'm like, hey, Jared. Like, please don't do that. Like, I'm very ticklish there. Yeah, that's exactly what the crew did. Anyways, I didn't know what that meant yet. And I'm pretty sure, like, Jensen was, like, chuckling at that, too. He probably knew. Anyways, we proceeded to do the scene, and, the legs coming at me kept increasing, and he's got very long legs, and he was just like digging in there and like going all sorts of places, and I was just like, this is what you shouldn't do, is like I kept reacting. I'm like, Jared! I was like actually getting quite angry at him, but the thing that made it worse was the crew kept like, Oz, come on, hold it together, this is your shot. Like, oh my God, just so much embarrassment, and I kept like trying to get Jared to stop. By the time I'm like, okay, I was just like holding Jared's leg down. And then Jensen started. And so by the end of it, I was just like, I had one leg on each of them, and I was just like trying to keep semi-relaxed in my face to perform the scene. And I was just like doing the rest of the scene. And we did it, but it was, man, these guys can't be like left together in a room. It's crazy. Yeah, a lot of it comes down to wasting time. I found out later that the first AD, who again is in charge of logistics and scheduling and planning, they're like, you know what the secret is? It's like, I actually schedule about like an hour of fooling around time every day, just because we know shit like that happens. I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. So again, I felt less bad after that, but they're well prepared for the pranking and the fooling around, and I didn't know that. I'm used to sets where if you mess up one take, like that affects the rest of the day, right? If you're taking more than 2 to 3 shots, like, ooh, you might lose the scene by the end of the day. So it's never a good thing from where I come from. Now that I'm doing a lot of Hallmark movies right now, like you try to do like 2 takes. And if you don't do 2 takes, like we might lose a scene that will get cut out of the movie, and that's not usually a good thing. So yeah, it was nice to have the luxury of time on Supernatural.
I'm not sure what it is, but I think there's something kind of telling about the fact that you went from not wanting to create a ruckus on set to literally breaking one of the show's co-stars.
Well, to be fair, that was not on set. I did get a hero's reception when I came back on set. Turns out everyone shared the same sentiments as Misha did. Yeah, oh man, it's like Jared in Italy, like while Jared was recovering and like still in bed, he's like, hey Oz, it's like, I just want to let you know, I talked to Jen, I made sure she called immigration. Told them not to let you back in the country. I'm like, okay, Jared, I understand. He's like, I also talked to Bob Singer, made sure that they gave Kevin Tran an even more horrific death. I'm like, oh, okay. He was joking, thankfully. But yeah, it was, man. It's like a lose-lose proposition for these guys, though, right? Like you prank them, like haha, and then they can get back at you like 10 times as hard. I think Misha pranked Jared once, probably. Look what happened. Yeah, just don't get into that. Thank you for your question, Duane. Hi there.
Good morning. So I'm
Morning.
here for my granddaughter's 15th birthday, which was in May, but we finally made it to Supernatural Weekend.
Happy half birthday!
Her name is Ginger. She's right over there.
Hi, happy 15 and a half birthday.
So my question is age restrictions aside, in an alternate universe, if you could have had any role in Supernatural, who would you be?
Crowley. I have long said, okay, Crowley, like, to me, is like the most fun character, right? He's good, he's bad, and that isn't even including the Mark Sheppard effect. Actually, oh man, this is like, how many of you know, like, how me and Mark Sheppard met? Have I told any of you guys this? This is probably my favorite. It's a little racist, but only a little bit. When I met Mark Sheppard, I didn't know who he was. I know he'd been in a million things. I knew after the fact, but you know, I was just being friendly. This was my 3rd episode ever. I was like introducing myself to people I don't know, as you do, and I remember like, oh, hey, Mark. Yeah. Oh no, sorry, I didn't know his name. So I'm like, hi, my name is Osric. Very nice to meet you. And I held out my hand. And it was like a really awkward moment like that. And Mark like looks over and he like looks away. I'm like, oh man. He crosses his arms and then he points to his chair with his thumb. That's, you know, and the chair says Mark Sheppard. I'm like, oh, Mark. Right. Okay. And then like, I turned and walked away. And that was our interaction. We did the quickest scene together. I think I was in a lab and then he snaps his finger and I'm like sent away. And that was it. And then I'm like, okay, that was my one day with Mark and I'll never see him again. And then flash forward like 3 months, I get a haircut. I'm like completely shaven. I think the episodes started coming out. I've only been in 3. And so I wasn't really, I also didn't know this show Supernatural, right? And I hadn't really seen it. Didn't expect anyone to recognize me for anything. So I'm walking around Comic-Con in San Diego, and you know, one of the busiest Comic-Cons in the world, thousands of people in the street. I had like 2 people that actually recognized me from the show. I'm like, oh, this is cool. I didn't know like people watch this show. And then the 3rd person, like I'm in like the main intersection, get a hand on my shoulder, I turn around, and it's Mark, and he's like, Osric. I'm like, huh? This just proves you don't all look alike. And it took me a second to register that. I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I was just like gonna find some tacos or something. And he's like, oh, no. He's like, well, if you're not doing anything, you just come with us. And he was with Jim Beaver, who I hadn't met at the time. He was with Misha, who I only met once. And he's like, yeah, just come with us. And he took me on my first like real Comic-Con adventure. Took me backstage to like all the gifting suites, and like it was such a crazy thing that started off with such an innocuous racist comment.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Osric Chau!
Thank you.
So, who's never been to one of these before? Okay. You guys don't know this yet, but you'll know this after this. This is actually the real reason for the entire show. Yeah, this is why everyone comes. But hold on. But I host it, so you gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. You gotta go. He's not allowed to do this. Yes. Yes. No. Yes. No. It's a real-time filler. Billy's dating Phyllis Diller. The Yes No Game. And hosting it. That's right. It's Jason Mans. Jason Mans. Jason Mans. Jason Mans. Jason Mans. Thank you so much.
Do me a favor. Don't mention I was here. I'm banned on Fridays.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
And I'm banned from bonding with the band on Fridays.
Your secret is safe.
Yeah,
with
get me out of here. Get me out of here.
Thank you so much for risking life and limb to sing that wonderful song. Thank you so much. So we have